Yo, and I promise that is the only piece of canned music, pre-recorded content that I do not own, nor does my guest, that I will be playing for this hour. Y'all, I am excited to be in community, to connect audiences, and to be collaborating on LinkedIn, as many of you know. And maybe about a month ago, I went to Podcast Movement and rekindled a connection. Someone who I had met at PodFest earlier or sooner. I think it was PodFest, but a lot of Podmatch. Anyway, there's so much overlap as podcasters. It's the bridges and tunnels that get us to the places we're going. I am honored and excited to be able to introduce y'all to a very dear friend of mine, Rita Risha, who is the host of Bippity
Bippity
Boppity
Boppity
Business.
Business. What's up, everybody? Vinny, thank you so much for having me on your neck of the woods. I came prepared today. I have my many ears on. There are not many opportunities in the day-to-day where I get to be extra and tout them during the workday. So, I'm bringing them here, but I'm also bringing them for a reason. I used to be a teacher many moons ago, and when I used to teach my little ones voice or music or any of that as a former theater kid, I would always try to use either something memorable or someone memorable to teach about, right?
Yeah.
So whatever topic it was, I remember there was one kid where she had trouble remembering like different notes on the scales, and we did it to a Lady Gaga song, and now she remembered it, right? But why I'm saying that is because when it comes to brand, a lot of people think that your brand is something that you see only. It's a logo, or maybe it's a color, but your brand is more than that. It's what stands out. It's that memorable thing, right? So when you look at these mini ears, whether you like Disney or not, you think or feel or know something. This symbol has some type of connotation or meaning. And that's part of what inspired the podcast that I have called Bippity Boppity Business. And also down the line, inspired some of the podcast coaching work that I do and production work with Reignite Media. So, yes, touting the ears, but I'm also doing it partially for the audience watching so that they remember brand is more than what you see. It's what you feel and it's what you know. So,
Well
let's take it from
said.
there.
By the way, I love a nod to nostalgia when it
Yes.
comes to creating a brand. I would be nowhere in my life if it weren't for the 90s and early 2000s of pop culture, right?
Yes.
I need to think of my Now That's So 2002. I need the iteration of that. Y'all, I am the guest, which is exciting to get to say in my own play. I'm the guest here of the hour. I'm handing over the hosting responsibilities to Rita. Rita, I'm going to play something real quick, and then this will officially start me handing over the reins to you. And I am honored just to be in your space, and thanks here. And y'all, buckle up, because this is some pretty fabulous introduction work, if I do say so myself.
No one makes magic in business like Disney. Join us as we hear from Disney cast members, influencers, and enthusiasts to uncover the secrets of what it takes behind the scenes to make Disney such a successful and well-loved brand. We will hear their journeys, inspirations, and have some good old-fashioned Disney fun along the way. So relax, pull up a chair, be our guest, and let's get down to Bippity Boppity Business. Well, what a pleasant surprise. I am taking over the reins, surprise, surprise, and I'm going to be working with Vinny to provide you what I believe are the hidden Mickeys of branding. So why Vinny? Why this show? Why this whole thing? I don't know if many of you know this, but my pal Vinny has a Disney history. He has won a Mousker, which is basically like an Oscar. And I need you to tell the story, Vinny, before we get into all of this, the context of like, what the heck, you were at Disney? How many people on LinkedIn know that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. So this is funny. As we're about to have this conversation, I'm realizing something here. because I didn't technically work at Disney. Of course,
Mhm.
I didn't work at Disney during my
Right.
heyday at
Right.
MTV.
Right.
I
Right.
couldn't possibly be
The
working
paths
for
cross. They
you
crossed at some point. For
know,
me, when I see the Disney brand, I'm like, "Oh, Disney."
no, it's very true. What happened to me was the truth, I was looking to audition Pierre from
Mhm.
Simple Plan for a show called Damage Control, which was like your parents go away for the weekend, and then a celebrity it's Hulk Hogan knocks on your door, chaos ensues, and what would happen? We had hidden cameras, the parents were in on it. It was a fun big show, an iteration of Punked where celebrities were in on the construct, but we, the people, were the subjects of the story matter. And Pierre was performing at grad night I think it was 2002 or 2003. He's performing at grad night on property down at Disney and in Florida. And for those who don't know, grad night is this like magical 2 week program where Disney basically sells tickets to a lot of local high schools for sure, maybe some of the states around that can actually fly and come down to Florida. They close the park at night. They pump top 40 through the entire park. Like Ariel's Grotto had a foam party,
It's
and
so cool. I wish
it
I was there for
me
that, man.
too. In high school, I was going to say in college, in high
Yeah.
school, I got to do Disney's Magic Music Days in
Yes.
marching band. Right, I learned the symbol, so I could actually go and perform in the street parade. It was the highlight of my high school performing career, mostly because the only role I ever got in high school was Magaldi and
Yeah.
Evita, and this is like a weird role for me. I'm too
I
much
always got
personality for
understudy. I never got
it.
the clout.
Give me the person. I get the personality based stuff.
Right.
And so here I am, and me and my friend Christine and I were working together at MTV. We laugh all the time because I'm going to come down, but I have to record this audition. So where do I record the audition? That doesn't, complicate anything. So I got an extra hotel room at the Animal Kingdom, but it was on the flamingo side, and the flamingos were much louder than the giraffes were. So there was like some just awesome energy around it. And sure enough, since I was there to audition and I had the night free, so I got to meet the Disney handlers and the in-park entertainment executives that were there. And they had this really cool process. They were finding artists that were basically going to break in about 6 to 9 months, because you have to lock in that talent, and you have to start selling tickets in August and September of the school year. The event didn't happen until April or May. So there's quite a journey from an artist perspective that was there. And look, from a price perspective, if you can tap into a younger talent that's about to explode. And I was familiar with this because Britney did it, and Sync did it. I worked very closely with Mandy Moore, and Mandy Moore did grad night. So I understood the impact that it had. And to be honest, I said, look, I can't work with you. I can't book, your shows, but I'm happy to make some introductions in music, and I'm happy to introduce you to the brands and businesses and labels and the people at them who are telling me what their priorities are. Because
Mm.
I am having similar conversations from MTV's perspective, because I'm trying to figure out what talent could we invest in over a period of time that's going to grow. Who's the next Ashley Simpson? What's the next
Right.
version of an artist whose life we can follow? And
I want to highlight that on that just for a moment,
yeah,
because I
please.
think it's so cool that at the time when media was booming, in my opinion, the 90s, MTV, just the crux of media just being so sensational and influential at that time. Vinny was the You were there. You were executing and meeting and networking. And I think there's something to be said about the talents and the strategies that you acquired from that time
Oh
that are
yeah.
actually relevant, if not even more relevant, potentially a lost art in modern media now. So tell me just a little bit before we go back to the story of being at Disney. Tell me a little bit more about what being a multimedia brand strategist or talent development executive, like, what did it mean then, but what do you think it means now?
Oh yeah, and this is a great question because the word brand and branding has also changed as it
Right.
should. Look, brands and talent have always had this synonymous relationship. So it makes sense as the word talent has evolved. Now when I think of a company's talent reputation, that really encapsulates encapsulates the energy of the community of employees and workers of that place, as opposed to Broadway talent, artistic talent, creative talent, right? So we've really expanded what this word talent means to be much more inclusive. When I was in talent development, it meant I was working with celebrities to figure out ways to take artists and turn them into actors. Like we got to do with Beyonce and give her first role in a featured film, Carmen, a hip opera, and Mandy Moore, give her first acting role. I don't take credit for the genius,
I
but
mean, yeah, that's pretty
I
cool
don't
that
take
you
I
got
take
to work with Beyonce, though. Like, the
but I
discoverability of that is
Oh
huge.
yeah, yeah. Well, the
She's like, "No."
discoverability is you. Well, it's funny because she didn't win the award, so I always laugh at Dreamgirls and some of these giant movies where I was like, I know that I'm on the reel, like I know
Somewhere.
I was on, yeah, I know
Somewhere
there was like
there.
a tape, and I can talk about the Beyonce audition because I actually was a casting assistant at that time, and
Mhm.
MTV Films was part of my responsibility. So me, her, and John Singleton were the only three people in the room when she did it, and I'll say from that experience, I learned the power of creative sharpness, that one percenters who are creative, who are collaborating with each other, if they can share their vision, they don't need to give performance notes and line reads and nuanced notes that can be limiting to a performer. I'll never forget because Beyonce did her lines and the Vinnie Potestivo ego kicked in. I thought this was my moment to show a director that I'm a filmographer or director. So I don't know what I was trying to prove. I got all crazy MTV with the camera, and John took my hand and he did this and he goes, I want you to be 6 inches from her face. All I want to see is her eyes. All I care about is her eye. I can see she can act. I'm in the room. I'm reading with her. I will never forget what this feels like, Vin, but I just want to see her eyes, just capture her eyes, and let's do it again. No one even spoke a word. We did
Wow.
it again. She laser focused on those eyes, and that was it. It was a wrap. She didn't even redo the scene again. We said thank you, and then she hired. And for a long time, I thought like I pulled attention away from her. I was always beat myself up because I was like,
Yeah.
why am oh man, I'm getting a note in the middle of her audition. Like this is not cool too.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, what I laugh. What did I think that I could do that would detract from the energy that Beyonce is
It's
creating in
Queen
that?
Bee. Like,
You know
there's
what I mean? It's
what are
like,
we gonna do?
Vin, you want to calm down a little bit. But I realized John wasn't talking to me. He was giving those notes to Beyonce. When
Mhm.
most of us talk, we look into the eyes of each other, and there's like,
Mm.
things that we do in reality that don't translate well on film. And eye contact is one of them. Looking at a dot, a ball, a line. This is like off camera tricks 101. And
Yeah,
when I
and
realized he was just sharing with her that one methodology of acting and that she got it, I was like, oh, I was in the room for greatness. And then when it took me 20 years to figure out that story.
sometimes we look back at things and you go, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I'll tie back into that Beyoncé thing in just a moment,
Please.
but just as a silly story, it was one of my first B2B podcasts that I was producing, and you know me, Disney frou frou hee hee ha ha, right? I'm just learning all the B2B stuff at this time in my life, and the guy tells me, he's like, "I just want you to know we really wanna highlight that we are a unicorn company. We're a unicorn." And I you can already see where this is going. I didn't know what on God's good earth he was talking about because I was like, "Oh, that's cute. This guy's like rich. Like I am literally sounding like Paris Hilton in front of this guy." And I'm like,
He's
"Cute,
also
love
rich,
it."
rich, by the way.
Literally, but I was literally like, "Cute, love that. Haha, unicorn, are you sure about that?" I literally said that. And it didn't take me until just freaking 2 weeks ago. This was a long time ago. 2 weeks ago, I was in a hotel room in Austin. They were having a startup VC whatever thing, and
Hmm.
in my hotel room was the bust of a unicorn, and it said the explanation of like a certain company that has reached a certain dollar amount in funding. And I looked at it and the thing looked at me and I went,
Hmm.
hindsight 2020, man. So when I was getting negative feedback and I thought I was all delulu because I was like,
Yeah.
I'm no better than you. I had no idea. But back to what you're saying with the, this is just a random story. Back to what you were saying with the eyes. I think
Yeah.
something that in general Beyonce and talent and that the acting industry at that time has already done very super well is making that human connection, that human association, and taking those subliminal and psychological things that we naturally gravitate to as humans and infuse
Mhm.
them into the work. So something like the eyes, we think about now how that translates in some content or branding where you want somebody to be able to see your face on your profile. You want content that embodies that human so that that connection can actually be made. So
Yeah.
I would love to hear more about maybe some things that were branded or done at that time, maybe what you the work you did with your talent to kind of create that one-to-one personal connection even further than what you learned later about that
Oh,
eye
yeah,
and
sure.
personal contact.
Well, even let's just stick with eye contact, for
Yeah,
example, because I even now as I'm talking to you and for people who are watching this will notice maybe I'm looking off camera. I'm thinking, and when I think, I tend to look off camera,
right,
but when I'm watching this as a viewer, I'm no longer connected to the viewer because I'm looking elsewhere.
right,
And when you realize how our actions are received, not just perceived, but received naturally because of how we've been conditioned by society and all of our actions before us. First off, I want to point out that we do have the ability to change that, right? So we have the
right,
ability to show up how we want to, when we want to, in the iteration of topic and surrounded by people who are supporting. We have a lot of choices that we have now that we didn't have 25 years ago when you had to
right.
get approval by 15 people to even see a camera, let alone be in front of it or have distribution. Eye contact for me was important on TRL. We had a show on MTV called TRL, Total Request Live.
Shout out.
And shout out to Carson Daly. They just had 25-year birthday, by the way, which
Wow.
is so cool. Ananda Lewis, Dave Holmes, the OGs, all my OGs. Um, there was a note that we would give the host where it was like, after you're done, tossing to the video, just keep looking into the camera. We know you want to look up at the music video, and we know you want to see the music video because that's what the audience wants to see. But the audience wants to see you looking at it. And the second you look away from the camera, it looks like you're no longer, like you're on to the next segment. A producer might be pulling you, like you're not as invested in the thing you just told me to watch. And if you could just stay a little bit longer, that eye contact just a little bit longer, and not do nothing, just be present, just live in the silence of the toss to a video, that will create such an amazing connection with that piece of content they're watching. And equally served, coming out of that package, I learned two tricks. One was always have eye contact, and you'll see this now that I'm pointing this out in any news format where there's a hostess talking to a package and something's coming back. They'll always look straight into camera. They won't say anything. We'll wait for the package to roll. We'll have eye contact when we come back, but we'll often be in the middle of a conversation. Oh my God. Yes, you're so right, y'all. We're having the best. I'm kicking off as if I'm almost like finished. Like the party is rolling.
Right.
We're talking here off. There's this moment of like laughter. It's a weird thing to say. I finally noticed it in The Office.
Really?
They will start a scene with the phone ringing just as like the momentum entry point into an office, as opposed
Wow.
to a slow roll into that. And it's just that idea of connection and connectivity that comes from eye contact. And if you are in video podcasting or podcasting, there's two things. One, everyone's talking about the 4K camera because I do believe the future of video is high quality.
Mhm.
Also, the user experience on these platforms needs to be high quality. So
Right.
unfortunately, we do need to be recording in 4K, 1080 or 4K higher. A lot of times that means for us, we have equipment outside of our camera outside of our computers,
Right.
and there's a camera on top of a light with another light over here and another, so our eye contact isn't, quite hitting exactly where we want it to be. I choose to use the new iMac because, and it's only 1080, the screen, but it allows me and you to be so much closer together
See,
than
I
what.
agree with you on that aspect because, yes, there needs to be a certain standard, but at the same time, I feel like maybe for someone who's just venturing out into video content, the addition of all these other pieces of equipment when they're just trying to connect and learn how to connect
Oh yeah.
can affect the overall, like, just for lack of better words, vibe of the content because you're just in your head thinking, where am I looking? How am I looking? And I think as video podcasts and podcasts, not just podcasts, but general content evolves, we're going to have to learn as a soft skill in a way of how to talk and engage with each other on these platforms, just as we would one to one in a business setting, too.
Yeah.
Right. So, and what that means is we're going to have to get better at connecting and being discoverable in that way. Right.
Yeah.
So I would love to, tie into kind of some of the lessons that you've learned past and present about being discoverable on social media or just as a
Oh yeah.
whole, as a brand, as an entity. So we
Yeah.
can start the journey there because if no one can find you, it doesn't matter how great your brand is, right? At the end
Yeah.
of the day.
Right. Well, there's even that in finding you is sort of like in the visibility and awareness of your brand. If no one
Right.
can find you and share you, I
Right.
mean, do you even exist? 20 years ago, we had this thing called the water cooler moment. We actually like waited for people to get thirsty biologically to convert around water and actually talk about social content and pop culture relevance and topics that weren't necessarily mainstream. We had to create these things in television and give these small pieces of information that could be shared and bite-sized conversations around the water cooler. When we got cell phones in our hands, that deregulated the need to wait for water coolers to have that conversation. And for me, I would say the thing that's consistent between then and now is that visibility with more visibility just turns into uninvited visibility. It turns into unimpactful, unwarranted, unwanted, unshareable visibility. It's like that song again, that show again, that person again, because there's no part of that existence that's either adding natural value to the conversation or value to the person's ego, where they feel like by discovering this person and sharing it is actually going to make them be seen, as a leader or as an expert. And there's a lot to be said about the ego when it comes to sharing.
So
But
you think
shareability, it's shareability. With TRL, it was people sharing their drive and want for those videos to be in a top countdown that got those videos. It was the sharing part that got them there. And if we're not creating content that's shareable, especially now in 2023, 2024, it's not going to see the light of day for very long because there is so much content being created.
you make such a great point that sometimes a mistake that somebody can make in the pursuit of discoverability, they travel into this strategy or mindset of more, just show up,
Mhm.
just show up, just show up, just show up. But I want to highlight what you said. If it doesn't have value and it just feels purely ego stricken, why would somebody care? Why would
Yeah.
somebody look at that content, feel some type of connection and want to share it, right? And that's what I love about Disney is some of the best movies, best stories, we have an innate desire to share them or discuss them. And it's because maybe it's not always value in the sense of what a business would do, but it touches on something to our core, an
Mhm.
emotion, a feeling, a story, a scenario that gives that like just uncontrollable desire to just share with somebody else, right? And the best stories in business, in life, feel that way. So for you, when you're coaching somebody, how do you kind of back the layers and help them decide, all right, what you've been doing is you've just been pumping out to the void. Let's bring it back here now. How do we coach them?
Yeah, I think there are, well, 5 questions I stick to ask. One is, are people making a real effort to connect with you? Like, do they go out of their way to connect with you? If they see you at an event, are they crossing the room to connect with you, or are they just waving and letting your existence sort of occur and be?
Toodaloo. Yeah.
Yeah, like, hey guy, how you doing? You know what I mean? Versus like when we saw each other across the room, and it was like the magnetism, started. It was like I couldn't not be pulled
Yes.
into and see how you're doing. So are people making a real effort to connect with you? Secondly, are people talking about your ideas and your opinions? It's not just about having ideas and opinions, improving the ideas and opinions, and putting all that content into context so that people can take your ideas and opinions and bring it along with them. But are they interested in what you're thinking and what you're doing? And do they share those ideas? And I'm mindful of that when I am not finding my value, but executing my value.
It's like that
Uh,
song, "Let's give them something to talk
uh,
about." And there's a reason for it though,
Absolutely.
right?
That's it though. And you know what? Even let's give them something to create about. That's why
Mm,
I create stickers on Jiffy. And if you type in my name in Jiffy, not only will you see my stickers pointing to things and all happy sort of things like that, I actually take the thumbnails for all of my LinkedIn podcast, all of my LinkedIn newsletters, and I upload those to Jiffy with some extra stickers in them so that they can be so when people are searching for that type of term, brand development, content development, LinkedIn, podcast, they'll see my image, and from my image, they can click on my image and go straight to my newsletter. So it's a great form of visibility. But like, how are you empowering the people to create? At MTV, I was empowering the people to create because I would literally walk around to management companies and labels, and I would tell them about the inventory we have on television that I knew was available, a 30-minute show, a 60-minute show about a documentary, or a 30-minute show that if we can do something in studio. So, we have these needs, these mandates, in media where
right.
I know I need to fill.
Wow. That's so cool too. I want to point out the Jiffy idea. That's
Yeah.
super creative
Hey.
because it's like the new age version of seeing a sticker on a pole out somewhere where
Mhm.
people like used to take pictures of them and be like, "Oh, I saw this sticker," and whatever. It's literally just that. All of the basic concepts, they're innately the same. They just evolve over
Yeah.
time. And something else we talked about before that was kind of a cool trick or strategy that you use is utilizing IMDb. I
Mhm.
listen, tell me about this because when I first heard about this, I was like, I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, if we want to find out who the executive producers are to our favorite Disney animated shows, if we want to find out who the voices are, if you don't know by now,
You
there's
don't
one
know.
place. Yeah, right. There's one place to go, and it's owned by Amazon. I want to point out IMDb, the Internet Movie Database. It's owned by Amazon, and IMDb is, let's put it this way, it is the go-to source for intellectual property owners. So traditionally, that's been big film studios and TV studios because they owned intellectual property. But about 3 years ago, Amazon allowed podcasters to be identified as intellectual property owners, which means a couple of things. One, there's a lot of credit that we worked for that we have a right to, and we shouldn't feel guilty to ask for things we work hard for. Those
Correct.
those credits include director, executive producer, host, self. If you have a crew of people working on your podcast, it could be copywriter, editor, sound mixer, audio engineer, original music tracking. All of your guests get to be tagged in. So now what I'm doing is creating data points that are recognized and indexed by Google and other search engines,
Mm,
because by being a guest on my podcast, it doesn't quite tell Google that we have the connection that we have, as does IMDb. And I would say that for two reasons. Number one reason is because imdb.com has a higher domain authority than anything I own, any of my website or podcast, or IMDb owned by Amazon has like a 99% domain authority, which means Google truly trusts this platform as a source.
mm.
There's a tremendous amount of diligence that happens as a source that they will pull from. I love talking to people about using credits for networking.
Yes, tell
The
me more about
ability
that.
oh, yeah, the ability to give someone special thanks. Are you kidding me? Especially people who aren't creatives, who would love to see their name in the scroll of a TV show or in the special thanks of a show. I'm able to give special thanks to people who volunteer their time, volunteer their energies for my podcast. Maybe it's not even anything directly to my podcast, but because it helps me, it helps my podcast, and therefore I give them special thanks. It's a way to officially connect the two of us so that Google knows it. So when I type in Rita and Vinny, it will show up that not only was I a guest, on your podcast, but you've got special thanks on my podcast. Guests give hosts and platforms visibility.
There's also a potential angle that I would like you to educate me on from a PR standpoint as well,
Mhm.
because I think for someone venturing new into digital media, business, content creator, and the like, they may initially have some trouble connecting to more of those, standout guests that have talent or management agencies still kind of doing some more traditional type outreach and they're looking for some credibility. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that platform would help with that as well
Absolutely.
too.
Yeah, absolutely. If you show that you can speak their language, that you can respect their art form. For example, if you're reaching out to a celebrity or a talent or someone of notable stature that you don't have a direct connection with, you should have a one sheet, because professionally, we have one sheets in the industry. I have a
Right.
one sheet for every Snoop Dogg After Dark, TRL, Direct Effect, Wild and Out. I can think of all the shows that I've booked. There's a one sheet for that show that talks about the opportunity, the distribution, the remuneration, the community, like a one sheet that has all the opportunities, so it's easily shared. Also a release. Some people are actually, they're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Can I have you sign a release?" I'm like, "Sorry. I thought you were like professional and this was
Ooh.
like the real deal." Cause like I should sign a release, by the way.
Right.
And I want to speak to that, by the way, if I can.
Yes,
Um,
please.
if anyone is looking to put out a podcast release, please reach out to me. I would love to send you the language that I use for two reasons. One, it's approved by YouTube and NBC and a couple of other platforms that I've worked with. It's a really favorable verbiage in that release. And I've seen some releases going around that I don't know how to say this. They're like
They may
where
be
my
there
where
might
my
be
Swifties at?
holes or
Like, where my
right.
Swifties at? Like, this is not
Right.
American Idol. You do not get to own my thoughts, my words. You do not get to convert our episode into an educational course that I do not financially,
Mm,
see. There's a lot of weird and unfriendly language that's going around, probably for protection, probably for opportunity. And to that, I just want to say two things. One, if you know how to use it, then ask for it and be very transparent and clear about how you're using it. So like, I'm fine giving rights if there's a clear path
yeah, just
for it.
communicate it. Right.
Also, I will edit the version of what I'm giving you if you're going to own it versus if we're going to collaborate it and own it together. I will show up differently. So
Right.
I want to put that out there. Secondly, um I actually have a mutual release. So when someone sends me a release for their podcast, I have a mutual release that I send back and I say, "Look, I'll sign yours. Mine supersedes yours and it builds on top of what we signed." And basically it makes it mutual. I don't want anything out of this. I just want us to have mutual rights. This is yours. You have ownership. You're making money from sales and advertising because this is a podcast.
Right.
If you take our video and put it on YouTube, I understand you're going to make money from YouTube. I do not feel entitled to that. I do hope that with the blockchain in the future, that
Maybe.
allows creators to have a tighter relationship on an episode level,
Mm,
because what's making this podcast industry bigger, Rita, is episodes between you and I that make
right.
it's us, the creators, it's these episodes that are making it better. So I do believe there's a cleaner, better, more supportive way to be actually collaborating with each other, and the ownership of materials that are being, traded on how many platforms now. I remember
Right.
when it was just the podcast platforms. Now a lot of people have digital networks that are knocking down their doors. They're on a different, they're on Vudu, Pluto, and all these different OTT networks.
Everywhere. And that's why it's so important, because I think, to touch on why this is relevant is that when you are just branching out into creating content online, you may not even know how big it could become. You
Yeah.
might think day one that this is just a little thing that you do for fun, and hopefully that's how you start. It comes from that place,
Yeah.
but it could be something wonderful. So it's important to know what the do's and don'ts are of doing social right from the get go, in order to not only thrive, but also communicate and protect yourself as well.
Yeah.
I also
Well
really
said.
push with my hosts that if they get a sponsorship, don't jump. Get a contract, read the contract, review it, and make sure it's documented, because maybe it's just me, but I feel like a lot of newer, just up and coming like business podcasts, they
Mhm.
don't know that yet. Maybe they're
Mhm.
just ready, to do an email, sign a deal, whatever. They're ready to move forward with the sponsorship, or maybe they know the person super well. Like, you just might have a really close relationship with that business or entity. But before you do any sponsorship, triple check to see if you even want to, because like you said, like, there could be something down the line that could prevent you from something else if you're not sure. There's also lane exclusivity that could potentially happen, which is something I was really learning about this year, like picking
Mhm.
who you want to collaborate with one to one, but also on a sponsorship level, could potentially limit your opportunities in the future and negatively affect your brand if you're not being very diligent about these
Yeah.
things.
Well, collaboration, a lot of collaborations, regardless if it's brand to brand, a lot of them are still people who are executing them. And look, I work with, I would say 90% of my clients are my friends, but 100% of my friends are creative and come from my drive and goal to want to be
Yeah.
surrounded by creative, people. So I'm pointing out that, like, I've double vetted all of my clients, but there are deals in place and there are releases in place. That's the legalities of business. And to be honest, we want to go to places where we have to have rights to our content. And I understand why some people tiptoe in, and right, like to your point, like they don't quite understand how big things can get, because is it really going to happen to me? Am I going
Mhm.
to get the viral wand and not, tapped on my one, post that makes me go
Right.
viral? And the truth of the matter is in 1999 and in 2000 up to 2007, even, where virality and getting discovered had to do with a lot of other people other than you. And I think that the difference is now I would create the content that I want to be discovered for, not the content that's going to make me discoverable. Because, man, like, what is playing on TV nowadays? Be careful what
Yeah.
yeah, be careful what you ask for. So,
Yes, I feel you on that, because that was, for me, there's a lot of do's and don'ts discussed in content. But I think
mhm.
on my neck of the woods, these are a couple don'ts that are not often discussed. So I really wanted to highlight that to anyone listening, is think big picture,
Think
just how
big.
you protect your business, protect your brand, what you worked for, and make sure it's on your terms and everyone wins, kind of a thing too.
Yeah, yeah,
But
it's possible. It's absolutely possible for everyone to win.
so I want to kind of just switch a little bit to a fun topic. Vinny and I could talk for probably a million years into infinity. I love speaking with you, Vinny. But something
Likewise.
something that we kind of touched on once before, I want to share with the audience, is this idea of hidden Mickeys. Okay,
Yeah.
and for anyone who doesn't know, as a theme park enthusiast, when you go into the theme park, there are many ways to experience the theme park. There's the actual rides, there's characters, there's foods, there's whatever. But it's really the details in a brand that take it even farther than what you would expect. And hidden Mickeys are that in the parks. They're the thing that you can do when your kids are, screaming, or you're tired and you want to break and you just want to pass the time. But you'll go through different parts of the park. There'll be like a pothole somewhere or a little tower somewhere. And there's this little hidden hickey. That's not what I wanted to say. LOL. Friday brain.
That's
Little
grad night. That's grad night.
that's grad night. Sorry, guys. Love you guys. Sorry. Hidden Mickey. I'm dying. Hidden
Funny.
Mickeys everywhere. And the reason for that is that it also creates conversation. It gives something to enjoy and experience. It's immersive, bottom line, bar none, immersive, right? So when we talk about different parts of your brand that feel immersive, that feel conversational, what are the hidden Mickeys of your brand? For me, one comes to mind, and I'll tee it up to you right after. For me,
Mhm.
one thing that comes to mind is if you're a podcast guest, what does that podcast guest relationship or experience feel like? If you have a business podcast and you are using it truly to drive revenue to your business, that podcast guest experience creates a subconscious feeling about what your customers' experience would feel like for your business, correct?
Mhm.
So, give me your thoughts on that. And then rapid fire, tell me what you think a hidden Mickey of branding is for you.
Oh yeah, that's so fun. I just love this idea of the intentionality, and I love this idea of almost like a mile marker, being able to see it sort of a mile away. So
Mm,
for me, a hidden Mickey, let's see, a good one would be um authenticity and transparency. One of the best
mm,
ways an artist can demonstrate authenticity and transparency is by staying put, right? If they're traveling everywhere, they're on the move. The audience, they're meeting multiple audiences. We feel like they could be different people in front of different audiences. You're different in New York than you are. I'm different with I might be speaking a little bit too close from there. I'm like, because I was a different person in high school. I was a different person
it's
with
true.
one group of friends and with a different group of friends. Um, because I wanted everyone to like me so bad, and I did not have an authentic version of myself. So now that we have this ability to see ourselves, and with podcasting, hear ourselves, and really live and stop looking for me and just start being me.
Right.
Some of those hidden Mickeys are, so for transparency, authenticity, it is the good old trick of having a what's the word called, every at the hotels, and
What?
artists have artists
A
have
writer?
residencies
Residency? Okay.
residency.
Residencies.
I want to say
We got it.
residencies. This idea of strategically letting the entire world know where I am and being there for a consistent amount of time, right? It's
Mhm.
not a one-off. It's what Harry did with the Harry Style did with Harry's house in New York and LA, where it was like
Right.
14 days versus what Taylor is doing, which is 2 days here and 2 days there. It's a different relationship. And that transparency, the ability to allow a fan to feel dependent on your location to arrive and be with you at a point in time where you said you would be there. Those residencies to me are like clear hidden Mickeys, that it's time to let an audience know that they're dependable, because there's a lot of songwriters and storytellers that are out there. What that does is it positions them from storyteller and songwriter to source,
Right.
right?
And
Like,
you
who
know
gets
what?
the residencies?
An interesting parallel to that I'm thinking about as an analogy in
Mhm.
business is having your business podcast be at a conference.
Yeah,
It's almost like you're establishing that said,
sure.
like, this is my residency here. I am here. I am showing you that I am here. You are welcome to come here. And you are setting yourself apart. And what that's doing is that it's also showing people subconsciously, well, yeah, like they're that person. They're out there
Mhm.
doing the thing. Like they are an expert. Whether you're new or not, showing up with a mic saying that you're here and you're staying put for a couple days really
Yeah.
establishes that presence, and not only the aura in that room there, but the content that you hopefully create and post after the fact as well
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. I also love the geocaching element of hidden Mickeys, this
Yes.
idea that we've all actually stood in the same place. We actually saw the same rock, the same building. The actual Mickey itself doesn't change itself. So for me in branding, my hidden Mickey in branding is gratitude. And one of the things I do is I have a podcast.com, and then is a launch pad for independent podcasters to get discovered. And I have an interview sequence that I give people so I can blow them up and write their first article about them. I just love being the first.
Which is
So
amazing, and when he did mine, it
I
made
love
me
it.
over the moon happy,
Oh, I love
so
it.
just
My
shouting that
favorite
out
thing. Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you. And I keep one element of all of those art. So in the process, I'll ask you to fill out a small form, and I'll ask you to send me a couple of personal photos, not podcast artwork and not cover art from episodes, because those are already out there. Your podcast is already supported by them. What I was trying to do is support the actual podcaster, like the actual person who's going to far outlive, hopefully, and supersede, that one specific project, and more will come. And I know that if I can take the time to paint the picture that this is a real person and not just a podcaster, so I get
Right,
real personal images. I take that, I put it in your answers. I create a blog post. Our blog post is distributed because it's an RSS feed. I took my RSS feed to Apple News and Google News. So I have other blogs that are now pulling from my blog because I took the RSS for free
right,
and did that. And I'll teach anyone who wants to know what I'm talking about there, DM me and I'll tell you about that too. And I create this one featured image for them. It says featured podcast, or I give them like a little badge. I'm so excited. And the coolest part of me creating hidden Mickeys that I'm basically giving to other people who are then putting them on their social networks and their pages and their podcasts is that they're bringing me along in the
right,
journey. And by me seeing them, I get visibility, which is the part I struggle with gratitude, when you're like not supposed to get something back. But by getting that return on energy, I'm able to turn it into an opportunity that is to the nth degree. And we talked a little bit about nostalgia. I'm really good on building. I'm really, really strong at taking past, present, and future content opportunities, iterations of ourself, and putting them together in a really cohesive, growing, nurturing way. But similar to Disney, I don't focus on growth. I focus on development. I let
right.
development, grow. I don't focus on consistency. I focus on sustainability, and
Mm,
through that method, I'm able to be more grateful and have more gratitude, and demonstrate that in unique ways. And I love the hidden Mickey concept. I talk about Easter eggs all the time. Like,
right.
I have a whole career of planting seeds that have yet to be reaped or even grown. That when they do, I'll be able to say, "We did that."
We did that. I would
Yeah,
love to just emphasize what you said. Cons- Sustainable value over consistency.
yeah.
Because consistency is something that we all, as creating content, whether business or as a creator, feel that we have to strive to achieve. It takes energy, it takes work, it can feel depleting, it can take away the wonderment of and the excitement of why you wanted to create to begin with.
Hmm.
But what you're saying and how I'm understanding it is when you create to either, collaborate or from a place of gratefulness or sowing that seed or placing that hidden Mickey for later, however you want to call it, you're
Hmm.
creating an opportunity, not just for value in the moment, but sustainable value. It gives us that boost that we need to actually continue. And as things like burnout and pod fade and all these things are discussed, I think that's something that's so true because to be vulnerable for a second, I lost my mojo. Like my burnout was real, and it's because I overemphasized consistency
Yeah.
instead of what you're discussing, that sustainable value, that collaboration, and just being in the energy of in the room like with you and creating with you. It lights me up on fire in
Oh,
the
I
best way
appreciate that.
possible, truly.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the difference between consistency and sustainability. Consistency is 52 weekly podcasts a year. 52, 1 hour. I got to do sustainability is one podcast a week.
Mhm.
We're lucky to get to create 4 in a month. So how are we going to actually And what are we pulling from? In reality television, this iteration from a world that I come from, we have this term called story engines. And that's what makes consistency sustainable, by the way, is story engines. If the stories were crazy and they were all over the place, and sometimes I'll look at the Kardashians, for example, sometimes it was it's about business. And if there are things that we are not groomed to tap into, meaning the story engines for Kardashians are the family versus entertainment industry, right? So like that's the general, that's a larger story engine. There's always
Right.
something them versus an external force. Parentals and children. So there's always going to be storylines between the parentals. I can name a lot of Disney shows that also
There are
fall
way too many. Yeah. They have an engine and a formula for
the
sure.
full on story. Yeah, it's very, very true, by the way. Like you need the best friend as a protagonist or an antagonist to come in. Like there are real story structures that
Mhm.
happen, and it's in pulling from the same place that allows sustainable creativity, and that ultimately creates the what we see on the publishing side, on the viewing side, is consistency. You know, back in the day when the Kardashians were working, because I sort of feel like they were like the queens of consistency, and they kind of really taught me first that just by focusing on consistency you can grow. Yeah, the truth of the matter is that the more people see something, the more familiar it gets. The less
Right.
educating you have to do, the more entertaining it is. The more entertaining it is, the more I'll bring it into my life and start educating the people around me with it. So it creates this really interesting circle, this really interesting loop. So
You have
so
to almost choose the loop that you wanna be
that's it.
in
It's those
too.
story it's those story engines, though,
Right.
like, that's what talent development is. For Mandy Moore, it was no matter what age you were, she was always the cool younger sister. Even if you were a 12-year-old when she was 18, it still felt like the
Right.
cool younger sister. Like, that role didn't change until Rebecca
Mhm.
Pearson, until she was able to show us three well, actually, a little bit of old school Mandy and then a whole lot in the future version of her,
Right.
right? And for a long time, that was a big part of her brand. And we talked about this in an episode of mine on I Have a Podcast. What happened with her was suddenly she was presented with this gigantic opportunity to be globally relevant, and stepping into that power when you don't ask for it, but it's given to you and you have the opportunity to make change and difference is the most rewarding feeling, when your values and your goals and your creativity are the reasons why that opportunity exists. And to your point, empathy and love. I start with those two because most people don't. And they
Yes.
wait until the very end to SEOify it, oh, I'm gonna look like a jerk if I don't say this, or what am I, like, numb? I have to throw these words in at the end.
Yeah.
Oh my, I can't. And I understand the process, but like, if I could
Right.
be that person, then I'm not editing myself at the end. The
You're
editing might
establishing,
there.
like, the alignment of those values help propel the branding forward. Like hidden
Yeah,
Mickeys wouldn't do anything in a park as a metaphor if they all weren't grounded in a couple core values that everybody knew or felt or understood. So
yeah,
with Mandy's example that you just gave, like from the get-go, she was clear and you collaborate with her to be clear on her why, her goals, her pros, cons, the whole shebang, the entire picture of where this individual wanted to go. You did that work in the beginning to get there. And when we look at our brand, before you do anything with your brand, think about that.
yeah.
What will be your wheel that you go on? Are you going to end up on the burnout hamster wheel like I did, trying to entertain or give and not necessarily give out of a place of, I'm not saying that was negative, but like there has to be give and take. There has to be a long-term vision. And my long-term vision at that time wasn't much other than I know I got to get out there because I know you all want to be where the people are. Okay. That was but before you can be there, just think for that extra second. Why
Yeah.
do you want to be there?
Why? And what will you do? when you're there.
Right.
I know I thought about that. It's a great question. I thought about that this time around as I treat podcasting the same way that I treated the people I was meeting at TRL. We have a platform, there are stars. I'm hyper focused on 20, 30, 40 of us, and maybe 20 years from now, there's going to be a lot of household names, that
Right.
will grow into. But I want to know the people in the room the same way that I did then. And when I win, I want to win with the people around me who got me there. Uh, I have a weird feeling about winning anyway. I don't like leaderboards with creators on it and things like that because I don't feel like we need to be more competitive than the
Right.
industry is already making us. And if it's like, 3 creators and we're going to see who's going to get the most, use an affiliate, I'll use the other person's affiliate link. Like I don't want to win things that we don't win at together. And
Right.
I also don't want to motivate people or gamify people to be better at who they are just based on what I'm doing or
Yeah.
have recently done. Also, I operate with far too much grace to put that pressure on me to be as successful as I did. And also, I don't want to be as successful as I did on my last project. I want to be more successful.
We
So
wanna
if
go
I
further. We wanna go the distance,
right, we're
right?
gonna go all the distance, absolutely. Out there where
Out
they
there.
all like that's where we need to be,
Yes, amazing. Oh my gosh. Everyone on my channel is probably like, "Okay, Rita, get to the point. We're turning it into a Disney karaoke session." Just joking. No, I know there's secret Disney nerds out there. You work in fancy companies, but you like Disney just as much as I do. You tell me secretly.
Yeah.
Closet Disney fans. I know you're there on LinkedIn,
You're
okay?
se you're sending me the snapshots of Jasmine's toys, showing me what the hidden, things are. I know.
We know
You're
you're
out there
there.
looking at them hidden Nickies.
We know you're where you were. Okay, anyways, I'm not gonna try to berate everyone
That's
staring into
funny.
their souls. But Vinny, thank you so much
Yeah,
for
thank you for
giving me
this.
this opportunity to collaborate with you. Um, I think my takeaway from this conversation, I truly feel, is that when we want to create a brand, when we want to be discoverable, we want to build those building blocks to success. Not only do we need to think about who we want to be when we get there, but like you said, who do we want to create it with? Because at the end of the day, every TV production that I'm sure you've done, it hasn't
Mhm.
been one individual, it hasn't been one person behind a microphone. It's a team effort. And the beauty in winning with others is that, like you said, you've provided value at a larger level and in a way that feels good. It's that team mentality, basically. And if anyone wants to reach out to you, maybe grab that podcast release because I know I want to, or any other inquiries about how they can become more discoverable online, learn about how to potentially get awards or nominated for awards. I know that's something you do
Yes.
great at. How can they
Yes.
reach out to you?
Oh, I love that. Well, if they know how to play podcasts, then
Mhm.
so here's the plan. From this podcast play button, let's go back to said podcast. Let's
Mhm.
leave this be the 5-star review
Got it.
that finally you leave for Rita. I will see y'all in the 5-star review comments. After leaving a 5-star review, then you come find my podcast. I have a podcast. Literally the easiest way to stay in touch is through connection on podcasting since we're there. If you want to reach out and you want to say hi, I'm on LinkedIn 24/7. I'm very easy to find. I'm in Rita's world, so ask her and she'll make the intro. I just love you and appreciate you. And I love how you've just like buried your feet into this topic and have not pivoted from something that you find fascinating and the language around it that allows us to connect. And I just really appreciate that. And I also want to thank you.
Thanks, Vinny. Have a
Yes,
magical day,
you too.
everybody.